Hey everyone, Mystical Mark here. So this will be your weekly astrology forecast for the week of June 1st to the 7th of 2025. Now before we get into the charts for this week, if you are looking for any kind of reading with me, all those links are in the description below. If you're on YouTube, in my bio. If you're on TikTok, just go to my link tree. Everything is there. You can do the same on YouTube as well. All right, I offer live one-on-one readings. They are kind of a bit limited in time right now because I'm a bit limited in time, but they are there if you want them. And I also offer recorded readings on Etsy. So if the time doesn't work for you, I can just do the reading, record it when I have available time, and then send it off to you if that works. All right, with that all being said, we can hop into the charts here. But again, as I say at the beginning of all of my videos, astrology is an energetic template conducive to certain things. That is my guidance. It has been my guidance and likely always will be my guidance. All right, and I have more on that I'll mention in a minute here, but just to continue what I usually always say, astrology is an energetic template conducive to certain things, meaning this is always subject to change. Whatever I intuitively get, whatever predictions I make, the template is there. The astrological template is there. Things will happen within those themes, but it is always subject to change in terms of the specifics because we have free will. All right. And the analogy that they actually gave me the other night was interesting. It was like this analogy that the astrology or the energetic template that I talk about, or the chart, if you will, is like a math formula. Okay, but there's variables that exist within that formula, right? So for example, for simplicity's sake, we can take one that probably most people know. It's like velocity equals distance over time. Okay, so that is the energetic template. That's the formula. All right, now with that formula, what are we solving for? Are we solving for velocity? We're solving for distance? Are we solving for time? For simplicity's sake, again, let's solve for velocity. So distance and time. Well, what kind of distance are we talking? Feet, meters, kilometers, miles? Like, well, what are we talking about here, right? And for terms of time, seconds, milliseconds, picoseconds, hours, minutes, some other made up construct of time, like that's the variability that exists, okay? The variability within those variables is our aspect of free will, or the creativity that exists within that energetic template. And of course, that energetic template is the chart, astrology, etc., like I said. So I thought that was a really amazing analogy that came through intuitively for me the other night. And it was kind of really cool because that kind of helps it to make a bit more solidified sense as to what this truly is and to, how I deliver this. And of course, this is why doing this intuitively is somewhat actually a lot more imperative, right? And anyone can do this intuitively. In fact, most people are more intuitive than they realize that they are. They could be doing things or getting thoughts and going off their intuition, and they don't even realize they are most of the time. So, but what I mean by that is through this intuitively, that gets you to maybe what that variable was that was chosen specifically for that energetic template, like if you're reading a birth chart or something like that, right? So that's kind of what I mean by that. And if you look at my What Astrology Really Is video that I posted not too long ago, there was an excerpt of one of my previous videos, or clips from one of my previous videos. Okay, so pay attention to that. Maybe the guys are saying pay attention to that. Usually when I burp, they're saying pay attention to that. So that kind of really helps to solidify kind of what I'm saying here in terms of what I'm guided as to what astrology actually really is. All right. So with that all being said, I think I've blabbed on enough here, but it's something important that I think needs to be said. Let's get into the charts for this week. Let me just switch it on my end. There we go. Okay. So we're going to start here on Sunday, June 1st. Now, I'll start with this. I'll start with the fact that Venus will be in conjunction to Chiron on this day. Of course, I have the chart set to late at night here, but on this day is when Venus does conjunct into Chiron. Now, I've talked about with Venus in Aries, Venus went retrograde in Aries. We've had a lot of this other Aries stuff going on. Saturn is now in Aries. This is all this energy is kind of playing off on each other. But what this Venus in Aries was, and what my guidance was that we're dealing with the fact of our independent self that exists within relationships and allowing that independence with the other as well. Okay, and with this conjunction to Chiron, there's the wounds that have related to that maybe those aspects of codependency, maybe we weren't able to be independent or not allowing the other to be independent, etc., right? But with this conjunction to Chiron, the higher level of this, the higher vibration of this is healing that. Healing those wounds. And with Aries, what I'm feeling is that masculine, like setting in the boundary of being like, no, this is my independence, this is my sovereignty, this is what I get to do. You don't like that, then don't be with me, right? And then the other, respecting that with the other person as well, okay? The aspect of unconditional love, or actual real true love, unconditional love, is loving that person for who they are no matter what, even if they're completely different from you. Okay, that is more of a true relationship than kind of the fucked up templates of relationship that have existed on this planet for a very long time. All right, so with that, this is surrounding healing those types of wounds. Okay, surrounding that aspects of independence. What I'm being drawn to again as well is this fact that Saturn is in Aries. Remember, Saturn teaches through restriction. So it's that restriction of self, that restriction of independence, whatever, but that's where your growth lies. That's where you need to learn to expand, where you need to learn to set those boundaries and say, no, I get to be myself. I get to have my independence. I get to do this. If you can't love and respect that, then fuck you. Okay? And that you have to respect that for the other person as well. They have the ability to do that same thing as well. This isn't just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. However, that independence and your individuality and who you are is to be respected. And it goes both ways. Okay? That's what kind of that vibe is, and that's that Venus conjunct Chiron here. Of course, maybe this isn't just romantic types of relationships, but in all kinds of relationships as well. It's like, if you can't respect me for who I am, then fuck you. Okay, like that's kind of the vibe that I get, because it's that masculine Aries energy. It's like, well, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to be myself, whatever. Fuck off if you don't like it. Okay, it's that kind of a vibe. All right. Also on this day, where am I here on the chart? We're going to have Jupiter here in this semi-sextile to Uranus here in Taurus. Okay, so with this, the initial thing that I got with Uranus and Taurus, this idea of value and worth with uniqueness, individuality, etc. And with Jupiter here, the expansion of that through communication, awareness, etc. And I can see here, there's this sextile here to this Venus-Chiron conjunction with Jupiter in Gemini. Okay, so with Gemini, there's that awareness, that communication, that awareness in the mind, that very strong awareness. We're in Gemini season. There's a lot going on in Gemini right now here, right? So this idea of communication, awareness, etc. And of course, what I'm getting to with this Uranian stuff is stuff kind of coming out of nowhere, maybe as it relates to value, worth, money-related stuff, communication surrounding that. But as it's healing maybe these wounds of our independence within relationships, etc., and could relate to money and that kind of stuff as well. But like I said, initially what I got was that idea of like value, worth, etc., in our uniqueness, you know, as that relates to that Aquarian energy, as Uranus rules Aquarius, but also with the Venus in Aries, that idea of the identity, self, etc. But there's an expansion of that, expansion of communication of that. This is very, what I feel with this is very like masculine energy. Okay, we're dealing with Jupiter and Gemini. Gemini is a masculine sign. Uranus is in Taurus. Taurus is a feminine sign. However, Uranus rules the masculine sign of Aquarius. And we're dealing with Venus, even though she's a feminine, technically feminine planet. She's in a masculine sign of Aries. So there's this masculine kind of like powering vibe here through this. And what I mean by that is it's kind of like this bringing to awareness, but this action type of step. This isn't as introverted as it is maybe a bit more extroverted, as this is maybe coming to the surface, coming to light in that kind of a way. Right? Soon we're going to have Jupiter moving into Cancer as well, because then we're later, I believe it's in July, when we have Uranus coming into Gemini. So there's going to be a lot of these outer planets now that are in masculine signs, and Jupiter's going to be the only one in a feminine sign, likely to kind of provide a sense of balance to a lot of those outer planets being in masculine signs. Not that that masculine energy is necessarily bad, but too much of one thing can be a bit like, okay, it can be a bit much. Whereas Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, that heartfelt, emotional stuff, so pay attention to that, heartfelt emotional stuff, maybe through the expansion of that, especially regarding how we consider masculine energy here on this planet. In a lot of ways, due to patriarchal stuff and things like that, you kind of maybe need to be in your feels a bit to maybe tone down that toxic masculinity and bring it into a better place with that Jupiter transition. However, I'm getting way ahead of myself here. So, but that's kind of the vibe that I felt previously about Jupiter coming into Cancer, and of course, as we're heading into that point soon here. In fact, I believe it's next week, the week after this video, that's going to happen. All right. Also on this day too, we're going to have Mercury here in quintile to Neptune with that Saturn conjunction there. Okay, and what I said with that Saturn conjunction is like that softening to love for ourselves, for identity, and learning to set those appropriate boundaries in order to, have compassion for oneself. And, as that relates to as well, Venus Chiron stuff on this day too, but not just on this day, but because these are slower moving planets, Saturn and Neptune, they're going to kind of stick around in that area for a bit. So we're kind of feeling that maybe more compassionate aspect of setting those appropriate boundaries for respecting our own self-independence, etc. Of course, with this biquintile here with Mercury, there's again like this communication and this awareness through that. So that communication could be setting appropriate boundaries. It could just be awareness in our own mind that, hey, I need to do this, I need to do that, or these people, they're taking advantage. I'm not putting up with this anymore. I need to love myself first and set those appropriate boundaries, right? That's kind of that vibe. And with this biquintile, though, this is more of like behind the scenes work. So maybe this is an awareness that occurs behind the scenes, or maybe there's behind the scenes creative project going on to allow that to manifest in our lives in some way. In that sense, this could also maybe be previous creative work surrounding that is now coming out in some way to help with this, like on this day, right? Okay, so that is Sunday, June 1st. Let's move on to Monday, June 2nd. I think I was going to say Wednesday for some reason or something. I don't know. Anyways, Monday, June 2nd. And of course, this is when we're going to have our first quarter moon here. So previously we had the new moon in Gemini. So we're out of kind of that heavy Taurus energy and all of that stuff. Things are kind of maybe a bit more light, quick moving, very masculine. We're in a more masculine-esque kind of energy here, like I said. All right, with this quarter moon though is with the moon in Virgo. So one thing I'm kind of being drawn to here is the fact that the South Node is in Virgo. There's maybe a square here with this moon in terms of what I'm getting is like hidden details surrounding things, and I'm getting this idea that this Gemini, Virgo, both of these signs are ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is ruling the South Node because the South Node is in Virgo. So there is something here with this square that is surrounding aspects of maybe something that we need to let go of, whether there's something coming into our awareness, being illuminated into our awareness here with this quarter square in terms of maybe some subconscious icky things. I'm being drawn to more of like the moon card in tarot regarding the moon right now here with this Virgo energy, these hidden details, right, that exist in some way that are being maybe illuminated with this square. But remember, a square is that push for resolution. It doesn't have to be bad. Squares oppositions are not bad, okay? But it pushes for that resolution. It forces you to kind of see that to be like, hey, this icky stuff, these icky detail-oriented old practical stuff that, for some reason we used before, but why the hell did we do it, is still there. Maybe we need to push in some way to take action on this, to deal with it or get rid of it in some way, because I'm being drawn to that fact that it, ruling the South Node there. So there's something surrounding that aspect of there's like a letting go there in some way. I'm being drawn to like this biseptile here. So maybe there's an aspect of this that's like almost working behind the scenes. There's something. How do I articulate what I'm getting with this? there's something maybe happening on a higher level that is maybe allowing for whatever this release is, because we've got the South Node here in that biseptile to the Sun here on this quarter moon. Okay, so maybe there's an awareness of what needs to be let go of, but that comes through from a way maybe that we're not expecting. It's coming through from another level that we don't see or maybe don't fully understand, but where it's there, it's coming through, it's in our awareness. It almost feels like those who do like intuitive work or something like that, it's almost like a guidance in that way, and maybe terms of awareness of maybe what needs to be let go of, or what is in the past, what's practical that was no longer working in that way. And maybe as that relates to that quarter square here with the moon illuminating those hidden details in that sense as well. All right. Also on this day, we're going to have the Sun here in quintile to Saturn. All right. So what I'm getting with this is this boundaries. Okay, boundaries. As that relates to, again, with Saturn and Aries, our identity, the self, that kind of a vibe, right? And so with the Sun in Gemini, this is illuminating that awareness, that communicative aspect, the mind. It comes more into our mind. It comes more into our awareness through this in terms of maybe how we've been restricted, but where we need to set boundaries to have that growth with our self, our independence, etc., that exists within that. And of course, with Saturn moving into its conjunction to Neptune there, this is dealing with that, having that compassion for self in terms of actually doing that. All right, so that is Monday the 2nd here. Let's move on to Tuesday the 3rd. So of course, Tuesday the 3rd here, we're going to have this Mercury now in sesqui-square to Pluto in Aquarius. What I feel like this is there's an intensity of communication and something possibly coming out of nowhere. All right. And again, this can deal within our personal lives, can deal on a global thing, can deal in any way, shape, or form. Remember the variables that I talked about. Okay. What variable is being used here, or what number is being put into that variable? Is it global? Is it personal? Is it right? So there's that variability that exists here. Okay. So with a Mercury in sesqui-square is like a super square. So it strongly pushes for resolution. It's something that cannot be swept under the rug any longer. And what I was getting with this Pluto is stuff that needs to be faced that can't be hidden anymore. Okay, so it's there. And of course in Aquarius, the surrounding aspects of change, where we need to change, understanding maybe our uniqueness, our own weirdness, if you want to call it that. I don't want to say weirdness though, just our uniqueness, right? Because that is to be honored, okay? And maybe certain connections with others, etc., like that need to be transformed, brought to the surface to be looked at, transformed, and changed, okay? But I feel like it's something that's hidden, because remember, Scorpio can bring to the surface, it dives deep. Scorpio is very intense and deep, but with that Pluto, that transformative aspect, brings it to the surface for that transformation and change. And of course with Mercury here, there's communication surrounding that, an aspect of awareness, like I said, with that Gemini energy, but maybe there's an aspect of intense communication surrounding something that needs to be released. Of course, Pluto is retrograde, so this is something from the past, something that has already been known, something we've gone over before, that is now coming up to the surface again in terms of this, communication, awareness, etc. But what I initially felt was there's an intensity to that, and it almost seems like possibly coming out of nowhere in some way. However, remember, that any kind of prediction is always subject to change. However, that's kind of the vibe of the energy. So on whatever level that occurs, whether it's global, whether it's personal, whatever, or whatever variability that may exist within that for you, it is like that, right? There's no prediction is ever going to be 100% accurate. You might be, because of when you say it, then that trajectory still continues on that path. However, that is always subject to change. So it is not always certain that any prediction is ever going to be 100% accurate at all, ever. In fact, this is kind of just showing you what the potential, the possibilities can be, all right, for you to be aware of what is going on. And with astrology, of course, understanding this energetic template of that and being able to use it as well to your advantage in the best possible way, instead of just letting it walk all over you, right? All right, so Also on this day, we're going to have the sun here in biquintile to Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. Interesting, I feel this relates to that Mercury sesqui-square to Pluto, okay? So we have this sun in Gemini dealing with communication, that aspect of awareness, mind, etc. But now there's this, what I'm getting is hidden. Biquintile is that behind the scenes type of energy. It deals a lot with creative work, but what I'm getting with this is hidden. And I feel like that also maybe might relate to the Scorpio, but this Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio is maybe where we've been outcasted. The vibe that I get with this is sexual. In terms of sex, sexuality, this could deal with maybe aspects of abuse in that sense in some way, because that's where we've been outcasted, okay? So there could be an aspect of, shoving someone away, but what I feel is an aspect of maybe abuse surrounding that, in terms of sexual abuse, harassment, something like that wasn't good, all right? But there's maybe an illumination of that it's either behind the scenes or it was behind the scenes that is now coming out in some way surrounding this. Of course, on a general level with Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio, like I've said, this is basically transforming in all ways where we've been outcasted to ultimately heal that. But this is really maybe bringing to the surface aspects that have been hidden in terms of, abuse or something in some way. Or maybe where people have been outcasted in terms of their sexuality or something in some way, something surrounding that. We are in Pride Month, so yeah, don't think I need to say much more on that. But anyway, yeah, it's just bringing up that aspect of where we've been outcasted, bringing that kind of stuff to the surface. And of course, surrounding, there could be something shocking that comes out or coming out of communication, coming out of nowhere. And it may be relatable to what I'm talking about with this biquintile, the Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio. All right. Mercury here is also going to be, in quincunx to Juno retrograde. Oh my God, so maybe pay attention to this. There could be something here surrounding partnerships about this, whether that's contractual partnerships as like a business contract, or marriages, or some kind of committed partnership relationship. I don't know, but there's an integration here with this Mercury in Gemini in terms of what I feel like it's like a expression of something that has been hidden that maybe you weren't able to say. Oh my God, what the hell is coming through on this day? Pay attention to Tuesday the 3rd. I don't know what this is or what, and again, this is just a prediction, so whether it comes true or not, I don't know, but like there's something about this energy that feels like something might be coming out, but it very much feels like in like sexual harassment, sexually abusive, like that kind of a vibe. Like it doesn't feel very good to me, but it feels like what happened wasn't good, but what it feels like is now there's something coming out about this. And remember with the quincunx, this can be frustrating because there's an integration that needs to occur here. What I'm feeling is like the bad people don't want this to come out, and that's what's frustrating. And there's maybe a fear of talking about it, but this is just, anyway. But there's, with this Mercury here, that now that communication of that now coming out, being drawn to the fact that there's a lot of Gemini going on. So this expression of that, especially with Jupiter still in Gemini, that expansion of awareness of that communication, that kind of stuff happening, it's just kind of like that. Okay, and then with this quincunx, so like I said, this Juno retrograde, this is looking at those old commitments, contracts, partnerships, etc. Whether this has been like a business contract that was there because somebody had sex with somebody, or, that shit happens. Not that it should. Okay, we're getting it, but like that's kind of the dirty deeds that I'm getting with this energy in terms of it kind of coming out in some way. I don't know what this is, guys. This is just what I'm getting with this. Whether this is something that's actually going to happen, or whether this is the vibe of this energy that maybe I'm saying that you need to watch out for. And so, I don't think it's watching out for. I think this ultimately, feels good in terms of what this release actually is, but the deeds that have been done weren't good. Okay, that's kind of what I'm saying with this energy, and whether that ends up being sexual or something, or maybe there's some, I don't know, some case going on or something surrounding that, but now it's like, but in terms of our own personal lives, this maybe relates on a different level other than that. Maybe it's not sexual, maybe it's something else that needs to be uncovered because we're dealing with Scorpio in some way, but like this is just the vibe I'm getting here. But it deals, we're going over old ground surrounding partnerships, contracts. I'm getting like shady fucking business deals that are now being looked at to be transformed and healed. We're getting to the root of it with the Scorpio energy to be transformed and healed. Being drawn again to Pluto and Aquarius, again with that sesqui-square to Mercury, it can't be swept under the rug anymore. It's like being brought to the awareness in some way. And with this quincunx, it's frustrating for the assholes that are involved, but ultimately it's for the best good because the assholes need to be put in their place. Okay, that's the gist of the energy. I've got to move on here. That's very like, sometimes when you get this stuff, you're like, oh, we really want to talk about that? But it has to be said. A lot of this stuff has to be said. So even though that something is there, it's like you have to say it. We have to deal with this. You can't just hide under the fucking rug and be like, oh, let's be happy all the time. It's like, you know what we should be? We should be in a place where we are able to be happy all the time. But in order to get there, you got to face what you got to face. We got to deal with the shit, and finally end the crap once and for all so we can get to a better place, right? You can't just show up there with all the baggage that you haven't let go of yet. Okay, you got to let go of the shit so that you can get to that better place. All right, don't let it like bog you down, but you still need to be aware of these things that are going on. Okay. All right. Anyways, let's move on to Wednesday the 4th here. So on this day, we're going to have this Sun in this quintile to Neptune. Initially, what I got was hidden stuff. Okay, I still don't like the vibe of this, but I'm saying I don't like it, but ultimately this stuff, whatever is hidden that's coming out, needs to come out, and even though if it's icky or bad, we have to deal with it so that we can move on. And being drawn again to what I said previously with that quarter moon regarding what we need to let go of in terms of practical things and maybe hidden details. Something about that this week. Something about that. I don't know. Whether this is in people's personal lives that are watching this or on a global scale, I don't know. I'm just the messenger. I'm just saying, it's like, I'm just here. I'm getting the message, and this is what this is. And yeah, okay. Let's keep the message going. All right. So again, what I said is something that's hidden, but again, because of this Aries, this Mars stuff, what I feel is it relates to an aspect of independence and sovereignty that was maybe taken away. Remember, we have Saturn in conjunction with that, but we need to have compassion for that to set appropriate boundaries, to experience growth in our own individuality and stand up for ourselves in that sense. But this just deals with, like I said, there's something hidden here. And maybe it's surrounding that aspect of that restriction of that identity that was there, and now it's coming to the surface in some way. Whether that's initially behind the scenes first and then later on released and talked about, or it has happened behind the scenes and now it's being brought to our awareness in some way. Okay, so yeah. I'm just going to leave that at that. Also on this day where we have Venus here in semi-sextile here to Uranus. Venus still in the conjunction to this Chiron here. What I'm getting, okay, I'm still feeling this vibe. Let me just kind of tune into this more, this Venus, because I'm still getting into that vibe of that other energy, and so Venus semi-sextile Uranus. Okay, this is dealing a lot with, like I said, more of that unconditional love aspect that I talked about previously in terms of our value and worth in terms of our uniqueness, individuality, etc. Because remember, Venus rules Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, Venus is sign, and this idea of value and worth in terms of your uniqueness that you offer within this, and of course with that Venus conjunct Chiron in terms of healing that. Okay, and I'm getting to, it does relate to how I felt before with this other stuff, in that whatever is coming out then is honoring this fact of understanding and valuing our uniqueness, individuality, like within relationships, etc. Learning to heal that and honor that uniqueness within that, instead of I don't know, there's some negative stuff that maybe is coming to the surface, but it's learning to honor ourselves, our sovereignty, our uniqueness, individuality, etc. It's helping to heal that in some way. We also, on this day, is going to have Venus speaking in our sextile to Jupiter. So yeah, there could be an expansion of definitely awareness, communication. Definitely what I feel with this is that expansion, Jupiter expands what it touches, okay? There's expansion of that, your independence within relationships, of this Venus energy, and what I'm feeling surrounding that aspect of value and worth, etc. And because Venus is still on Chiron, the aspect of healing that. Even though Venus is coming off Chiron, that aspect is waning. We're still in that phase of healing that. As in, what I feel with that, they're getting me is that wound is now fading. Okay, through that expansion of awareness, that realization of value, worth, your uniqueness, individuality, etc. That is coming through here. Okay, so let's move on then to Thursday the 5th. All right, on Thursday the 5th here is when we're going to have Venus coming into Taurus. All right, one thing that I am initially getting with this is, and one thing that I normally get guided to in terms of Taurus, is actually manifestation. Okay, and mainly surrounding material manifestation. Now, that doesn't just mean that, you know, we have to be in Taurus to manifest things. That doesn't mean that. What I mean is that it's, I can't believe I'm getting this, it's prime fertile energy. Okay, I don't mean to offend anyone with saying that, because I understand like Venus Taurus is very like feminine energy, but what I mean is like prime fertile energy, like fertile soil, or fertile, you know, the aspect of like giving birth, okay, is that feminine vibe. All right, and that's to be honored and respected, not dishonored or abused, like in a lot of ways we do in society in terms of how women have been previously treated, etc. Okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about respecting this part of it. All right, but what I feel with that, and with that Taurus, that Venus and Taurus, Venus rules Taurus, which is why I'm kind of this point is kind of being emphasized a bit more that I feel here, is that there is this giving birth to whatever this material manifestation is. And of course, this could be money, this could be material things, that kind of stuff. But this is a prime time for that to maybe come to fruition in some way with Venus in Taurus. Okay, and that's what I feel with this kind of manifestation vibe with Venus here. Okay, so pay attention to that with that birth. The guides are saying, pay attention to that. You know, it's a prime time for this to occur in this space. And we're dealing more with the material side of Venus here, not necessarily. It could be with the relationship side, but what I'm, yeah, okay, it's good. They're like, it could go either way. Excuse me, because Venus rules Libra. Oh my God. The sign of relationships. All right. But again, we're dealing with that, being drawn to that fertile energy of Venus and Taurus kind of a vibe. So maybe there is like a pregnancy or something that, you know, that material aspect, that physicality of that giving birth, or maybe that aspect of conception or something. But I feel like it's like more coming to fruition, and it's not just like a physical, like somebody's having a baby. It could just be like a physical manifestation, like I said, or monetary or something like that. So that's kind of what I'm getting with this Venus and Taurus kind of a vibe. It's almost like what I'm getting now is we dealt with this aspect of individuality, honoring our own individuality within ourselves and the other. And now through that, we're able to manifest more abundance because we're more focused on us. right? So, but it's also about respecting the other too. It's not about hating on other people. It's not about putting others down in order to bring ourselves up. That's disgusting. You don't do that. You honor yourself, your own independence, but you also allow the other to do that as well. And through honoring that, you can then manifest the abundance, of course, for yourself, and do it for yourself, have proper relationships for yourself where they honor you, you honor them, etc. That's the kind of the vibe, that flow that I feel is kind of coming through here with this Venus ingress into Taurus. All right. Also on this day too, we're going to have Mercury in a sesqui-square to Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. What I initially get with this is, even though this is peaking on this day, all aspects have a build up and then they peak. So what I'm getting with this is that the build up to this is relating to that other stuff I talked about earlier with that Mercury, Pluto, all that kind of stuff, that sesqui-square to Pluto, etc. Okay, as now it relates to this Black Moon Lilith type of energy in terms of where we've been outcasted, and what I previously talked about, whether it's sexuality or sexual abuse or whatever that kind of negative stuff is in terms of where we've been outcasted. And in Scorpio, that really can be anything, because we're diving deep to find the core of where we've been outcast there, to heal, transform, and bring it to the surface in some way. Okay, and since we're dealing with Mercury here surrounding the communication of that, it's like something that can't be hidden any longer, something that can't be swept under the rug any longer, surrounding this aspect of being outcasted in some way. This is Lilith energy. This is very powerful energy. She's not going to fuck around. She don't fuck with bullshit, especially in Scorpio. Scorpio don't fuck with bullshit either. So the stuff that could be being said here could be shit that actually really needs to fucking be said in some way. Okay. Also on this day, we're going to have Mercury in sextile to Mars in Leo. This is maybe passionately bringing something to light, are the words that kind of came into my head. As it comes from the heart, but what I feel like is the love for oneself. Okay? As that's kind of that Leo vibe. Right? And expressing that in some way through some aspect of communication. There seems to be this vibe of loving oneself, respecting that for the other as well, and honoring and healing this aspect of our own sovereignty surrounding maybe where we've been abused or outcasted, either that's sexually or in terms of relationships, or some kind of a vibe coming through here this week in this kind of energy that is really coming through with this. Mercury as well is going to be in square to the nodes. So this is letting go of what we thought was practical. Okay, letting go of what we thought was practical and moving in a completely new and unknown direction. I've said that before about this nodal configuration. That was my guidance, and I'm saying it again with this. There's something coming to our awareness that either what I'm feeling is we need to take action on, and that could relate to that sextile to Mars there, that we need to take action on, but that can also be communication as well. What I'm being drawn to again is Gemini is a mutable sign, so it's surrounding aspects of change. This awareness or this communication that leads to that malleableness, that aspect of change, right? In terms of maybe what we need to let go of with this basically T square to the nodes here, what we need to let go of that we once thought was practical, that has now been brought to our awareness, and we now have to move in a completely new and unknown direction. Okay, and it may be unknown, but at least we get to be free of what I got was actually the shackles. The shackles was the word that came into my head. Okay, so whether it's shackles is what I kind of feel with that. But anyways, also on this day too, we're going to have Venus here in biquintile to the south node. Is she in Taurus by the time that happens? Let me just double check the time here. Enters Taurus 10:43 p.m. Central. This happens 8:15 p.m. So still in Aries. So what I feel with this, what I'm being drawn to is that 29 degrees of Aries is like that anoretic degree. It could feel like something needs to happen and something needs to happen now. So I feel like there's something practical that maybe needs to let go of, but it's hidden. It's something hidden, something happening behind the scenes, something like that. Something that was once practical that it's needing to be let go of in terms of relating to our sovereignty within relationships, or our sovereignty, within relationships, like ourself versus the other, but honoring that with the other as well. Something hidden there that's coming up that needs to be like released in some way. This is behind the scenes work that is happening for that release in some way, in that sense as well. I'm being drawn to the fact that Venus is still conjunct Chiron here. So again, still healing those wounds before she finally comes into Taurus. All right. And manifests maybe something, gives birth to something new and better. Okay. Let's move on here to Friday the 6th. All right. We're going to have Mars here in semi-sextile again to the South Node. All right, and quincunx to the North Node. There's a frustration here in terms of what we have to integrate to move forward. What I'm getting with this is because the North Node is in Pisces, we're heading into that unknown space. Pisces is the unknown, moving into the unknown. Okay, it's that veiled type of energy. It's frustrating because we know that we need to change, but we don't know how the fuck we're going to get there, where we're going, or what's happening. It's like we're seeing it as it comes. It's like the fog is slowly being lifted, but we can only see so far. It's like following that trail of breadcrumbs, but you don't know. You maybe understand a potential you kind of get a vibe, but you're not quite exactly sure what the destination is, but you know that you need to get there. Okay, that's kind of what that is, that vibe of that. All right, and what I'm getting with this quincunx is there's the integration that has to occur there. It's like, well, fuck, I don't know if I want to do this, but I have to because I know that it's going to be best for me. Okay, dealing with Mars in Leo, that passionate expression of self, like I said before. Okay, and that's a very masculine action-taking sign. And also with that Pisces energy too, maybe that compassion for self. Although what I get with that is because Neptune is in Aries, Mars' sign. Okay, and then Mars is in Leo, where that relates to our self-independence and that expression of that identity. All right, and of course with this semi-sextile to the South Node, releasing what is no longer practical, taking actions to maybe release that, or realizing that certain actions are no longer going to be practical and we have to integrate and head in a new direction that maybe is a bit unknown to us, but we're kind of being given the details as we go, right? We're not going to see where we're going to end up. We're only being given so much at a time. All right, we also have Neptune here in this biquintile to Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. So let me just kind of feel into this for a second. This feels feminine but healing. It's like there's a strong, what I get is a strong feminine energy here. It's like, what I get is almost like back in the day when women had to deal with so much shit. I'm being drawn to maybe like a Victorian era or that kind of an era where it's like you really had to, in order to, be a woman, you had to wear the fancy dresses and go out and do this, or you had to clean the house or whatever, do that. But again, what I'm being drawn to is if you weren't of a high status, there's this aspect of survival where you had to like almost like get in touch with that other masculine side of yourself just to survive, even though maybe you wanted to express more of that feminine beauty part of that aspect of yourself in that way. It's almost like you were being outcasted for who you were in some way. I'm kind of talking all over the place in terms of like different variables of this, but it's like you're almost being outcasted in terms of like who you were in a sense. So whether that's you wanted to express the femininity but maybe you couldn't in some way, or you were forced into a feminine role that maybe you didn't really want to be pushed into because you were like, oh, you're a woman, you have to do this, you have to do that. That's the kind of vibe that I get with this energy. It's very feminine, very kind of hidden, but it's like hidden kind of coming to the surface in some way. But I feel like that's that outcasted vibe as it relates to maybe this restriction in some way. I don't know why I'm getting it like that. Whether maybe there's an aspect of that that's maybe being healed culturally or within ourselves in some way, through that in terms of where we've been outcasted, or maybe like more of like a feminine power rising, or okay, what I'm getting is that because of this aspect of independence surrounding this Aries energy, it's like no longer being shoved into a place where you're forced to be something that you're not. Okay, and as it relates to maybe where we've been outcasted, where we have been outcasted because of who we were, but you're being forced into something that you're not. This is very like convoluted, complicated energy kind of coming through into me to try to explain this. But it's like it's happening on a different level with this biquintile, or this is like behind the scenes, like healing and clearing, but it allows us to maybe set. It's very feminine. It very set this boundary in an appropriate way, but it feels like I said, a very strong feminine type of energy that is coming through here, surrounding this. Also on this day too, we're going to have Mercury here in another biquintile to Juno retrograde in Scorpio. So again, there's this aspect, it's almost like on a similar vibe of this expansion of awareness. But in terms of these partnerships, reviewing these partnerships, contracts, etc. But this feels like it's behind the scenes. This feels like it's being reworked on in some way. There's creative work going on. Either it has been going on behind the scenes or it's coming to the surface. Has been going on behind the scenes, coming to the surface now, or is being worked on behind the scenes as this is happening, through this communication, awareness, etc., of the reworking of whatever these commitments, contracts, etc. are in that sense and in that way. Okay, Mercury is also in sextile to Chiron as well on this day. So yeah, there's an aspect of this wound healing. Like I said, with this Chiron from a higher level is healing those wounds of independent self, etc. by reworking partnerships, contracts, all of this. Maybe behind the scenes to this quintile, but there's a sextile here maybe surrounding. There's communication now coming out about this, awareness now coming out about this, that is healing that relates to maybe behind the scenes work or energy that has occurred or maybe is occurring now surrounding this as well. All right, Venus too on this day will be in semi-sextile to Saturn in Aries. All right, what I get with this is dealing with an aspect of value and worth, and this aspect of setting appropriate boundaries through having compassion for oneself in doing so and in doing that, right? Setting appropriate boundaries for our own identity, self, value, worth, etc. in terms of how that is coming through with that. And again, that can help with that manifestation vibe with this Venus in Taurus, as well as setting those appropriate boundaries to manifest what you desire or deserve for you. Okay? So that is Friday the 6th. Let's move on to Saturday, June 7th here. On this day, we're going to have Mercury here in biquintile to Pluto. Excuse me. So with Mercury here in this biquintile to Pluto, again, this was previously a sesqui-square. Now we've moved into a biquintile. So there may be creative work now happening or occurring behind the scenes, or it did occur or whatever, and now it's kind of coming out. But there's this awareness now. There's something going on maybe behind the scenes that we can't see surrounding this transformation and change as it relates to uniqueness, individuality. What I'm feeling is just some kind of shocking communication. Okay? Something that seemingly came out of nowhere. And now there's either something's being worked on behind the scenes that is now coming out of nowhere, or this could be something that's maybe more internally focused within ourselves that kind of comes out of nowhere, a realization that comes out of nowhere, communication that comes out of nowhere for us that leads to maybe this transformation in terms of our uniqueness, whatever, or aspects of change in some sense. Anything else on that? I feel like that's the general vibe of that, again, with that Mercury kind of Pluto energy there. Also on this day, we're going to have Mars in biquintile to Saturn as well. What I'm getting is that relating to this self-expression and setting appropriate boundaries to be able to do so. But again, with this biquintile, we're realizing we're putting in the behind the scenes work in some way to have this come to fruition. Whether we have been doing that and it is coming to fruition now, or it's coming to fruition now, that's kind of the vibe of that energy. Also on this day too, we've got Venus in semi-sextile to Neptune. All right. So again, what I feel like is this relates to that compassion for oneself in terms of our own value and worth. And I say that in general now, and not just within relationships, because Venus is in her home sign of Taurus, which is the material side of Venus, which relates to value and worth. Okay, and when it's Aries energy with Neptune there, the compassion for oneself, our own identity, etc., in terms of our own value and worth, etc., as that's coming through. All right, so it seems like there's a kind of a theme this week regarding ourself, our independence, healing things, healing abuse, maybe stuff that has happened to us in the past, growth, manifestation, moving forward into a new space, a new direction, away and healing away from old things in that sense as well there. All right. Okay, I think I've talked enough for this week. That's all I've got for this week. If you have made it this far in the video, leave a purple heart in the comments so that I know you're a real one. Thank you all for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.